Hi, today we're going to be making another craft. This one is making a bunny out of a glass bottle. If you don't have a glass bottle, you could use a plastic bottle. When I make mine, I have a weakness for these amazing things. So Starbucks has the Frappuccinos that you can buy in these glass bottles. So that's what I used for mine. If this is not something you have at home, that is fine. Any bottle will work just fine. You can use a plastic water bottle. You could use a mayonnaise jar. You get to choose. So for starters, I took the label off of my bottle. It did leave a little bit of residue behind. So after I peeled the label off, I just used a washcloth with a little bit of rubbing alcohol on it and rub that on there to get the rest of the sticky residue off of the bottle. So you're going to start with your bottle and you need to decide what you're going to fill it with for color. So on the first one that I made, on my sample bunny, I actually filled it with paper shreds and cotton balls to give it the white appearance. You could fill it with just about anything. If you wanted to fill it with tissue paper or if you wanted to fill it with candy of a certain color, that could be an option too. Today, I'm going to fill my bunny jar or bottle with paper shreds. So what I did is I just recycled a paper bag. I just took a plain paper bag, cut it into strips. And so I have a few strips here like this to show you. They're pretty thin strips. And then I just crinkled those papers. So to crinkle those papers to make them into paper shreds, I just simply folded them back and forth. So I'll show you a couple. So I just took my thumbs and pressed from one side to the other and folded them what I call accordion style so that they make a paper shred shape kind of like that one. Okay, so I did that with several different strips of paper bag, and I'm going to use those to fill my jar. Okay, so I want to try to put as many of those into my jar as I can. They don't have to be packed in there. They can be in there kind of loosely. So I'm going to go ahead and fill my jar with the rest of my paper shreds. Once you have filled your jar with the amount of filler that you want or amount of paper shreds that you want, just kind of make sure that it's in place all the way around the jar. If you need to, you can use a pen or a pencil to kind of poke them down in there. And then once you get it the way that you like, you're just going to take your jar cap. I actually painted my jar cap. It started out with the Starbucks logo on the top of it, and I didn't want that to show, so I just painted my jar cap white. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that on top of my jar to hold in the paper shreds. Okay? So the next step, the next thing that I need to do is go ahead and give my bunny some ears. So to make the ears on my sample bunny, I actually used a strip of burlap. You could use a strip of fabric. You could use tissue paper if you were careful not to tear it. I think you could even do the same with newspaper. The other thing that I thought would be great for recycling purposes and just materials that you might have available at home, I think just about every household has mismatched socks. So my other option was going to be, if I didn't have the burlap that I wanted, was to just take an old pair of socks and use those to create my ears, or to take a sock that was missing its mate and use that to make the ears. So that could be an option for you as well. So to make the ears for my rabbit, I'm going to use a tan piece of burlap this time. And all I did is cut it into a long 19-inch strip. Okay, then at the end of the strip, I rounded the corner because I wanted it to be more in the shape of an ear. I did that on both ends of my strip. Okay, so I gave it that rounded cut corner. Then what I'm going to do is put a little fold in the center of my strip or my rabbit ears, and I'm going to tie that. I just folded it so it wouldn't be quite so thick, was my reason for that. And then I'm going to tie those bunny ears. Let me get them a little bit more even. That looks about right. Then I'm going to tie those bunny ears around the neck of my bottle, just right underneath the lid. Now, I did not tie mine in a knot. I just tied one time. So it is possible it could come loose. So what I would suggest is to put just a little bit of hot glue underneath it to hold it into place. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just kind of pulling down right here, right by the cap area. I'm going to stick a little bit of hot glue right there. And then I'm going to slide that back up so that it'll stick into place. And I'll just hold it there for a second so it stays. Okay. My next step is to position the ears the way that I want them to be. So I don't want them to quite flop down that much. So what I'm going to do is take this ear, and I'm actually just going to put a little glue under it so it sticks up by the lid. So once again, I'm just going to do a little spot of hot glue right here. And then I'm going to take my ear and hold it up onto that hot glue spot. I use a low temperature hot glue gun so it doesn't burn me when I touch it. If you guys have a higher temperature hot glue gun, you may want to be careful where you touch your fingers on there, okay? So then for the other ear, I'm going to do the same, just kind of position that one where I want it, put a little spot of hot glue in behind to secure that one to the lid as well. And then that way the ears will stay in place. Now I have a lot of strings hanging from mine. That doesn't bother me. I kind of like the rough look on mine. If it bothers you, you can always trim that off. If you're using a recycled sock, you probably won't have those frayed edges anyway, quite like that. Alright, so I've got my bunny's ears in place. The next thing I want to do is give it a little bit of pink right inside the center of the ear. If you notice on my sample bunny, I have some pink inside of the white ears of that bunny. So to do that, I used my resources of what I had at home, and in my makeup drawer, I found some pink colored blush. Now, if you snag blush from somebody at your house, make sure that you have permission to do that. We don't want to take anybody's makeup that they don't want to share. I'm just going to put a little bit of blush on my blush brush, and then I'm going to spread that right down the center of my rabbit's ear, just for a little bit of color. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. I'm going to turn it just a bit, and I'll do the same thing with some blush just right down the center. It just gives it a little bit of color so it looks like there's a shade or shadow inside of the ear. Okay, so just like that. Then, now my bunny has some color to its ear. I actually want to add a little bit of an embellishment. You do not have to do this part. It looks fine, just tied right there. But if you do want to add an embellishment, like a flower, like I put on mine, you can make that out of paper. You can cut it out of a magazine, recycled mail. Maybe you just want to do some buttons there. Just kind of look around your house and see what you have that would work as an embellishment for your bunny's ears. So I have a white colored flower that I'm going to glue onto mine. So I'm just going to right in the center of the ears put a spot of hot glue, and then I'm going to stick that white flower right on top of it. Just going to press and hold for a second so it stays. And then in the center of my flower I have a lavender colored button that I'm going to put on there. So once again, just a little dot of hot glue. And then I'll stick my button right in the middle. Okay. So my bunny's ears are now complete. The next step that I need to do is to work on my bunny's face. Okay, so I'm going to show you my sample again. This bunny is going to look a little bit different based on the supplies that I have at home. So on my first bunny, I used a pink button for the nose. I did not have another one of those pink buttons, so I looked around the house to see what I could find, and sure enough, I had some wooden hearts. So I took this wooden heart and I painted it pink. If you wanted to do a heart-shaped nose, you could easily do this just out of paper, okay, or a little piece of cardboard. So I'm going to go ahead and make my bunny's nose next. To do that, I started with my whiskers. For the whiskers, I had twine at home. You can use any kind of string that you have. I have other string that's multicolored like this. This would work fine too. Whatever you have that you can use to make the whiskers, like I said, string, twine, if you have some embroidery floss or yarn, those things would all work as well. So I want to position my nose about here. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a dot of hot glue where I want my nose to be. I cut 3 pieces of twine, and I'm going to try to glue those about center onto that hot glue dot. Once again, these do not have to be perfect in length or size or anything like that. We can always trim that down later. Okay, so I have my whiskers glued on. I'm going to glue in the center of those whiskers my heart-shaped nose. Remember, mine was a wooden piece, so I'm just going to stick that little wooden heart right there in the middle, and then I'll try to position my whiskers around it. If you feel like your whiskers are too long once you get them on there, you can always trim those down. Okay. All right, so I have my whiskers in place. The next thing I want to add are eyes. On my sample bunny, I used buttons for eyes. I used black buttons. You could use whatever color you wanted. If you didn't have buttons available at home, just get some black paper or paint some paper black and cut circles out of it, and then you could glue those on. If you are fortunate enough to have googly eyes at your house, you could use googly eyes to glue on there. So you do have some options for that. So I'm going to use black buttons for my eyes. I'm just going to position those eyes above my wooden heart nose. And I'm going to put a dot of hot glue where I want one of the buttons to be. I'll go ahead and place that one on. And then I'm going to do another one over here on the other side. And I do want them to be about even if I can. Alright, so now my bunny has eyes. Has all kinds of glue strings coming off of it. Bear with me while I get those off. Alright, so my bunny has eyes, nose, whiskers. My last step is to give my bunny the mouth. Okay, so when I drew the bunny's mouth, I actually used a paint pen. You could do a paint pen if you have that available, but a Sharpie will also work just fine. So I also have some Sharpies on hand if you want to do it that way. You could use a Sharpie. Any kind of permanent marker that you have will work fine. If you use a paint pen, you just have to remember that you have to let it dry before you touch it. So to draw the mouth, I just started at the corner of the nose and I made a J and a backwards J connected together. Okay, so I'm going to set my sample bunny aside, and I'll do that on my brown bunny. So I'm going to take my paint marker. I always like to give it a little test right with a scrap piece of paper just to make sure it's not coming out too much and it looks like it's good. So I'm going to start right at the corner of that nose, and I'm going to make a J and then a backwards J for my bunny's mouth. Now, my bunny's going to have to dry. Okay, that paint will take just a minute to dry, so I'm going to set it over here and give it a chance to do that. While that is drying, I want to show you what we could do next. So I'm going to use my sample bunny. I haven't done this yet on this one. So I've got a cotton ball, and basically what I did is I just kind of squished the cotton ball out so that it was flat and round. And then on the back side of my jar, I'm going to come in and glue the cotton ball on for the bunny's tail. So I'm going to take my hot glue gun, put a little dot of glue right on the back side, and then I'll stick my cotton ball on there. Press it to make sure it stays. And then when it's all finished, your bunny will look something similar to this. Alright, thanks for watching. I can't wait to see what your bunnies turn out like. Have fun!